Hi, this is Alex. Sorry I've not uploaded one of these videos recently, but I'm pleased to have been away shooting. In fact, I think I've shot about 10,000 images since I last recorded one of these. Unfortunately, I've not had time to even begin to start going through those images, pulling out my favourites and thinking about processing them. It's been a busy month or so. So I thought I'd dive back in and do another continuation of my sort of portfolio review. So this is part 2 of 5. So the images that are on my website in a portfolio, and just a little bit of the backstory and my comments and thoughts about them. Images between numbers 21 and 40 we're going to go through. And these, to start off with, are, as I'm sure you all know, puffins, Atlantic puffins. These were photographed in the Farne Islands. Taken many years ago on a one-day shoot when we went and we targeted swimming underwater and diving with the puffins. And what we found was actually by swimming underneath rafts of puffins, our scuba bubbles bubbling up, they often got curious about them, probably thinking that they were schools of silvery sand eels, and dived down and became interested in them. The puffins moved very fast underwater, and it was very much a kind of a spray and pray type shooting. I think I would say that the second puffin in this picture was entirely fortuitous. I was just trying to concentrate on getting one of them in the picture, and I happened to get two in, which is what made this a standout image for me. The puffins are great to see underwater. They're perhaps more at home underwater than they are above the water, and they fly through the water in a very clockwork type movement. Tick, 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 tick. And they're very, very manoeuvrable and very hard to shoot. They don't sit still and pose for you. So yeah, that was why the spray and pray technique was important in this particular photo. Right, next shot is an oceanic whitetip shark. Oceanic whitetip sharks are sadly one of those shark species that has vanished from our oceans over the last 50 years, particularly because this is a shark of the high seas, and there's very little protection, very little laws controlling fisheries and exploitation of the high seas, and as a result, oceanic whitetips have been heavily targeted by fisheries there. And also the fact that their fins are particularly large for a shark has made them particularly attractive to the shark fin finning industry. And as a result, they've gone over most of the range, and they've gone from being really a super abundant shark of the open ocean, certainly sort of in the 40s, 50s, and 60s from last century. They were really abundant shark, and since then their numbers have gone reduced. In some places 90%, in some places 95%, and in some places 100%. They're absolutely absent over large tracts of areas that they were particularly abundant. They were perhaps the most abundant large carnivore on the planet. Perhaps at one point it's been argued, and as recently as sort of 70-80 years ago that was the case, and they've just disappeared. So seeing them now is perhaps the main challenge of photography with them. This one was taken at Rocky Island in the Red Sea, not one of the classic spots for them, but a good reliable spot for them. And this one was a particular target on that day because it was blinged up with all these lovely pilot fish. One of the challenges of shooting these guys when they've got pilot fish is the pilot fish will often swim out ahead of the shark to investigate anything in the water. So when they come and give you a close pass like this, the pilot fish often swim off the shark and swim onto you as the photographer and end up getting in the way of your photo. So this photo is one of my favourite ones with pilot fish, simply because the pilot fish have stayed pretty nice and neat. I'd love that one that's kind of underneath the shark. I wish his face was in the picture, but as always, these shots are never perfect. But I really like the framing of this. Okay, next up is a well-known photo of mine it's one of those kind of unusual photos that's been both a competition success, been published a lot editorially, and also been used in advertising in several different areas. And that's very unusual really as a photographer. Usually you have some pictures that sell really well as stock, some pictures that get used a lot by magazines, some pictures that win competitions, and they're always different pictures, and this is one of the few that's kind of ticked all those boxes, which is quite a standout. This was taken many years ago in Walker's Cay in the Bahamas, not a place that many people visit after it was destroyed in a hurricane, the island there. And there used to be a very famous shark dive there, and we went by liverboard on the Shearwater with Jim Abernathy on a wet pixel trip back up there to see the there used to be a bull shark dive there, so we went and dived with the bull sharks, and we also dived where they used to run the reef shark dive there, and just a few reef sharks turned up on this big sand patch, and it gave me the idea to shoot this rather different type of image of a reef shark, focusing it small in the frame with this really interesting background around it. It's a picture that's been much copied down the years, and that's kind of the way photography works. I would say that, you know, all photographers are influenced by each other's work, and the good thing about underwater photography, it's never possible to perfectly reproduce images, so we all end up taking each other's ideas and running with them in different directions. Right, next up is a candy stripe shrimp from the Pacific Northwest. This one's taken in Browning Pass in near Port Hardy in northern Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. It's quite a mouthful of an address, but that'll help you get there. And this is kind of one of the iconic species of that area, although a very small one. These candy striped shrimps are very beautiful shrimps, predominantly a sort of a clear, sort of colourless background, but with these yellow legs and antennae and things, and then red and yellow and blue stripes down their body. A very cool fish. This is taken as a high magnification shot. I'm not sure it's necessarily the best shot for showing this particular species, but the reason I like this shot is it was posing in front of a nice pink anemone, and that enabled me to get this beautiful pink background behind it. That's always made it a favourite shot of me. It's really the background that I think makes this shot a standout for me. This one here, this is Diver Brittany swimming through silversides. This is actually a setup shot we did during a photo workshop in the Cayman Islands, and we had silversides in one of the caves near Ocean Frontiers. This is a dive site called Grouper Grotto, where I was running the workshop, and we went there one day on a dive, and the aim was to use this relatively small group of silversides to set up diver shots so that everyone in the workshop could shoot one. And we actually ended up doing this twice. And there's a kind of slightly funny story about the first time we did it. Brittany was modelling for the shots, and she was wearing a Coral Reef Alliance t-shirt, sort of rash vest underneath her BC, which we thought was quite a good thing to wear. But unfortunately, her BC straps covered the sea of coral, which was the main word you could read on her chest. So she was hovering there with the word oral written on her chest, which kind of undermined the photo slightly. You know, just a reminder how, particularly in people pictures, small details make such a difference. So the second time we did the setup, we decided to do it. It was warm, it was in the summer, and we decided to do it as a shot without the rash vest for obvious reasons. The key to doing these shots is to get that perfect opening of the silversides. So the way you do it is you and the model hover with a kind of a curtain of silversides between you, and then you slowly move together. And at the moment that the school opens is the moment you take the photo, and you get these nice circular windows through the schools of fish. This photo here is taken in Sardinia in Italy. This is Laura modelling in this one. And this actually was not a planned photo at all. The plan was to do kind of, you know, more serious diver portraits. And I just set the remote strobe up in the cave, and Laura was just sort of waiting for me to be ready for the shot. And she was hanging in the water just like this, having fun really, I think, waiting for the serious modelling to begin. And I thought she looked kind of cool, just hanging out in this cave, posing like this, just having fun really as a diver, and took this picture of her. This cave, although it's actually very dark, it is classified as a cavern. Although I think it pushes that description a little bit. So it is a recreational dive. However, this picture has been criticised by some cave divers who say showing someone having such a chilled out time in an overhead environment sort of belittles the risk and danger of these environments, and might encourage people who aren't suitably trained to go into this environment. I feel that the photo, I think, shows how, you know, exploring the underwater world can be very relaxing and enjoyable. And I think if you've prepared well and you're diving properly, that these environments are there to be enjoyed, not to be feared too much once you've done the right preparation. Right. This photo here, this is Kat posing. This is obviously a section of the portfolio where I was trying to promote the fact that I don't just do marine life images, and I have people shots as well. This is kind of a classic diver and marine life photo, and I particularly like in this marine life that the turtle is totally oblivious to being watched and is busy there munching away on these soft corals growing on the Janice D wreck, just busily chomping down. And I like how Kat is modelling in the background there. Right. Next up, another diver shot, this one on the kittiwake wreck in the Cayman Islands. This is when the kittiwake sat particularly upright. And on this day we had some scooters with us on the wreck, and we were doing shots just snorkeling over the wreck. I think I'm on the surface, and the two divers here, which are Tilly or Mark in the middle, and Chloe on the left there. They were posing. Actually, what I wanted for this shot was the two of them flying very symmetrical, because I had a very symmetrical composition, but the communication didn't quite work out, so I ended up with this sort of asymmetric composition, which is probably, I think, adds quite a lot of interest to the shot. I think if everything was too symmetrical on this, it would probably be feel a bit too staged, and I think the asymmetrical positioning of the two divers in the frame, I think, adds a lot of interest. So it's funny how sometimes as a photographer you want it to be one way and it turns out another, and then you end up liking the other way a little bit more, because perhaps your initial idea was maybe not as nice as what actually turned out. Another diver shot, this time inside a cave. This is Cesar swimming inside a cenote in Mexico. This one's shot technically with an interesting lens. This is shot with my Zeiss corrector lens, and this is using this lens really to keep the all the stalactites and stalagmites nice and straight in this shot, so not using a fisheye. We did actually dive this site. This is at Stargate, which is, I think, one of the nicer cenotes for these really great speleotherms, these formations in a cavern environment, so in a non-specialist environment. And although these are really, I think, impressive growths, they're actually ones that you can photograph as a recreational diver, which is, I think, is really cool. I like that there's some fish in this one. You can just see them over Cesar's head there. And I think this whole picture, it works really well. The only thing I don't like, actually, is his tinted face mask, which is, he's got this kind of orange tinted face mask, which I could have corrected in Photoshop, but that was what he was wearing, so that's what's in the shot. I think it would have been nicer to have done this shot with him wearing a slightly nicer face mask. But apart from that, it's really nice. It's just lit from the front with two strobes and a third strobe off camera behind these formation, and he's swimming through a gap in them, which kind of looks smaller than it is because of the perspective of the lens. This is a backlit hairy frogfish. This is the one, I think the colour version of this is in my book Underwater Photography Masterclass. And describing this technique and doing this technique on this subject and then promoting how to do it, I've definitely been caught some flack from people saying, well, it seems now that no one in underwater photography can swim past a frogfish without backlighting it. So apologies for popularising this technique. And I know many people have emulated this shot down the years, but that's why also I wanted it in the portfolio. Obviously, a lot of people coming into underwater photography these days, may well not see my photo before the many shots that have it's inspired. But that's kind of fine. That's the way it works. I mean, the people who it has inspired, obviously. That's one of the reasons that hopefully enhances my own reputation down the years, is those people know where they got the idea for their great shot, even if the people looking at their pictures, maybe it all gets mixed up in the mists of time. This is a photo taken at Jellyfish Lake in Palau. I've only been to Palau once, and it was great that there was thick jellyfish in Jellyfish Lake when we went there, and we actually went to the lake twice. Once carrying strobes and once not going with strobes, I think. Maybe I carried strobes both times we went to the lake. This photo is taken without strobe. But I was happy that I did lug the strobes over the mountain or the hill to get into the lake, because I think it was good to have that option photographically. And I think this shot is really cool. Taken just by diving down a little bit into the schools of into the smack of jellyfish, and shooting up through the water. And I just like the density and the chaos of this particular frame. Another sort of chaotic frame. This one is a long exposure with zoom blur, so that's zooming the lens during the exposure of a school of big eyes in the Maldives. And I like just like this dreamy effect. I really like this picture. I think it's got a lovely feel to it, of textures and and feeling in the image, of the atmosphere that this zoom creates. I know it's one of those pictures that divides opinion. So I really like this picture. I feel it's a picture that I really like representing my photographic vision, my style. But I know plenty of other people just don't like it at all, just find it a mess. And that's absolutely fine. I feel this is a really interesting. I think what I like about this is that the main formation of fish is strong. So it's not, it's a nice image of that, a nice formation captured and then enhanced with the picture. This is a popular shot of mine. This is a rhinopias in Lembe. Shot there. The rhinopias, they're often relatively deep in Lembe, so you don't get a lot of opportunity with them. And also because of that depth, everyone wants, and because they're a cool critter, everyone wants to shoot them. And then it can also take time to find them on the dives, because although they're quite large and quite colourful, their camouflage is surprisingly effective. When you see photos of them, you think that would be easy to spot. And the amount of dives I've had looking for them and not finding them. Moving on to another very symmetrical image. This is a manta ray in Galapagos, actually. It's a giant Pacific manta in Galapagos. And a really nice head-on image. I took this picture actually by swimming above the manta, who was very relaxed with me swimming there. And I actually just leant forward with my camera and shot back at the manta. I'm sort of above this with my hands down. And I was able to take this picture. Sorry about that. Got invaded by my daughter and her friend wanting something or other. So, right. Last few images. This is another ray shot. This one is one of the huge southern stingrays. It's a female southern stingray at Stingray City here. Photographed with my friend Lauren on a dawn stingray trip. Kind of not really a perfect composition, but I do really like the interaction between the diver and the ray. This is, I think, Lauren's first time at Stingray City, and the rays can be a bit overwhelming, so she did pretty well to pose for this this photo. I think the pink of her rash vest, I think really, or pink and purple, I think should want me to say, of her rash vest really elevates this shot. I think it works very well against the blue of the water, and I really like the reflection, the refraction in the surface as well. Right, back to Canada, which is actually where my next big diving trip is. So it's nice to see a couple of these pictures, the candy striper and this photo of these black rockfish in the kelp forest. Kind of my rule in this type of environment is if the sun is out, then it's great to be shooting wide angle. I think particularly the kelp just looks amazing with light coming through it, and can look very flat and drab when the light is flat. And so this environment here of just rockfish gathered in the kelp forest is just a fantastic opportunity for wide angle shooting. This is actually one of the very first photos I took of a seal or a sea lion, and it still remains one of my favourites. This is an Australian sea lion female taken in Kangaroo Island on a dive where we just had a couple of sea lions for a relatively short period of time, and I was able to get this image here. And I was hoping to be able to get underneath the sea lion, so I set my shot up. The way you kind of set a shot like this up is to get the exposure right for the background, you kind of put your hand in front of your lens, block out the ball of the sun, and get your settings right, so that if you are able to swim underneath or get the main subject between you and the sun, you're going to get your background exposure right. And that's what I did to set this shot up, and then managed to get in position and shoot this image. And it always looks very angelic. I think it says celestial here. It's very angelic with this kind of sun coming from around the sea lion and her flippers out to the side, and just kind of very relaxed, gesture-full pose, which I think makes this picture work really, really well. Also, it's pretty much the only time I've ever photographed Australian sea lions, so it kind of remains a cool photographic opportunity. I've not been to some of the famous dive sites that you can visit to see this species. And now back into the UK. This is an older male grey seal. And typically when we dive with grey seals, it's the young grey seals, and particularly the females, that tend to be the really really friendly ones, the ones you get really good interaction from. On this particular day, it was just it was an older male that was the friendly interactive seal, and gave me the opportunity for this mouth open shot. The seals quite often come and they enjoy pulling at your fins and mouthing around the camera lens. So a mouth open shot of a seal isn't particularly unusual, but a mouth open shot of an old male seal with rotted down teeth and worn away teeth like this individual has is much more unusual. So it's kind of quite cool quite a cool variation. Normally all these shots I've always got young seals with perfect white, pearly teeth, because they're usually in their first year or two when they're really interactive. So it's quite nice to have this shot with an older male seal. This is another of my favourite seal images, and this is a grey seal photographed in the Cairns of Coll, where I was just last week, actually. And when I was swimming around there, I was swimming around through this area trying to work out where this picture was taken. And from memory, I had assumed this picture was taken in one area. And now looking at it now, and then having visited there, I actually realised this is taken probably very close to shore, in that I'm actually right against the shore, and then this is looking out across the shallow water spiral rack. There's a little bit of this next seaweed you see here. I don't know if you see my mouse, but this next seaweed you see there, that looks like a Laminaria digitata, which you don't normally. So that's kind of classic oarweed or kelp that you don't typically get anymore in this particular environment. I don't know why it was dominant there. And then beyond that is all the spaghetti weed, which these days is the sort of dominant seaweed in that area. So the environment has changed quite a bit, but I think this is quite recognisable as being shot from the shallows out into deep water. And then, what I like about this picture, sorry to get sidetracked by the seaweed, is just that grey seal so nicely posed in that window in the frame. I think that creates a really strong and impactful composition. This picture here was won a couple of categories in our big British wildlife photography competition, the BWPA. And actually won them about 10 years after I took it. I think they've introduced a time window now on the shots to stop people like me who don't do much UK photography for a decade being able to continue to win prizes in the competition by just finding another picture from the archives and getting it in for the next year. And finishing off with this sea lion. This is a Californian sea lion in Mexico, in the famous La Paz, near La Paz in Los Islotes Islands. And here it's playing with a Panameric starfish, which is the prettiest starfish you get in that area. So one of the sea lion pups, we go there at this kind of in the autumn when they're really starting to be in the water a lot and very playful. They're still quite small, but they're very playful. So it's a great time to visit this destination. And then you're always looking for photos of them playing with objects, because that's just such a nice photographic opportunity. And the favourite thing for them to play with that looks graphic and really cool in photos are starfish. And this is the prettiest, the prettiest starfish species. So really nice to get that into the shot as well. And then the final thing, that a challenge of shooting in Los Islotes, is the fact that the sea lions themselves are dark, and they usually stay very close to the rocks, which are also dark. So the key for getting this shot was actually this vertical upwards camera angle that enabled me to frame the sea lion against the bright blue background of the surface. And I think that's really makes the shot. And then I like its kind of very cheeky eye and mouth open. It looks almost like it's smiling, and it's almost speaking. In this picture, and the starfish is kind of sticking out of its mouth in a very, very pleasing angle. So I really like this photo. It's a simple shot taken on one of the early dives with the WACP, the Nauticam lens, when we were just I don't remember if this was my one or one of the prototype ones, but yeah, I've always liked this shot, and I think that angle of view of the WACP was absolutely perfect for these subjects. Right. That's the next 20 in this. I'll be back again relatively soon, probably, to do another 20 and guide you through my portfolio of images. And then when I've caught up with a bit more of my processing, I'll be very excited to show you some new images. I did a massive trip to the Red Sea. I've also got some additional images from my previous Mexico trip to share, and I've got lots of pictures as well from my recent Scotland trip. So loads and loads of images to share once I get on with some processing.